Hey everybody, it's Scott Steen with winnersandwhiners.com. Welcome to the Tuesday edition of Today in Sports Betting, or as we should rename our show, NASCAR, 24 hours, all day, all the time. That's what kind of what this week is going to be here, at least for the first part of it. Talked a little NASCAR Saturday, talked a little NASCAR yesterday. You know what we're going to talk about today? Hockey. No, we're going to talk about NASCAR. And we've got a rare midweek race there at Darlington Speedway. And who better to bring on than my fellow NASCAR enthusiast. He is the one, the only. He is Scott Reichel. Scott, how are you today? Happy Tuesday, buddy.
Yeah, good to see you again. Yesterday, I actually won a German soccer bet, which I alluded to later on in the show. Unfortunately, it aired roughly 7 hours after the game finished. Having said that, I've had two thoughts on Bundesliga soccer matches. One of them I played, one of them I didn't. And the combined score of both games was 8-1. So overall, not too bad. We'll hopefully
Crushing
that
continues. Crushing it, my friend.
Yeah. I took a prop, so the score wasn't really relevant, but I took Leverkusen to be leading at the half and full time at roughly plus 170. It closed at plus 190. I'm not really sure what people were betting because Leverkusen absolutely just destroyed them. And I found out a secret in soccer. Might blow your mind. Try to fade the bad teams.
Ooh.
And Bremen was the home team with no fans. I'm not really sure what that means anymore. But they had the worst home record in the entire league going into the game anyway with fans. So I kind of just assumed that Leverkusen would destroy them to pieces. And they did. So it was a pretty easy win at plus money.
Are you saying the word Lederhosen?
It's Leverkusen.
Leverkusen?
Yes.
I don't know what that is.
It's not the outfit. That's another word. That is not. No.
Is Leverkusen? Is it a town? Is it a company?
That's an excellent question.
Okay.
I'll have to find that out for you. But Bayer, not Bayern. Bayer was a pretty easy winner yesterday.
It's not Munich Bayern.
That's a different team.
Oh, it's a different team?
It's a different team. You have one team that's Bayern, and you have another team that's Bayer, and they're both in the same league.
Well, that's just silly. You don't have the Seattle Seahawk and the Seattle Seahawks.
Correct. But I feel like most people can tell the difference between Munich and Leverkusen. So I feel like it kind of works itself out. But Bayern, with an N at the end, is the best team in the league. It always is.
I knew that.
This year's actually pretty close because I believe they're only 1 point ahead of Borussia. But Leverkusen is also usually top 4, top 5, and they are currently 5th. So they were kind of in must-win territory. And
how many teams are in the Bundesliga there, Scott?
I can't give you the exact number there, but it's somewhere north. It's somewhere north of 17. They have a lot of teams in there.
Okay. All right. Good enough. Well, is that where our future is? Kind of, we're going to be doing a little Bundesliga show here before too long.
Potentially. I'm still waiting for your locks on the show for Korean baseball. So we have a lot of stuff on the agenda that we'll have to get to.
A lot of stuff in the hopper. All right. So let's talk about this NASCAR race. This is going to be a weird deal because not only is it run in the middle of the week, the starting grid has been determined by the reverse order of the finish in the last race. They've taken the top 20 and flipped them. They've taken the next 20 and flipped them as well. Scott, does that make this easier or harder to handicap?
I think that compounded with the fact that this race is going to be roughly 100 laps longer than the previous race, I think it's going to be tough. I personally, looking through this, whether it was this morning when I gave it a second look or when I looked at it last night for the first time, I thought it might get easier. It really didn't. In terms of actually handicapping this race, I'm definitely going to be playing this one for fewer units than I did on Sunday. I just feel like I got a better read from the pole positions, etc., on the weekend race as opposed to this one. This seems like the kind of race that we were talking to before we went live, where a relative long shot could potentially win this race. I know that Harvick's going to be one of the favorites that everyone's going to take, and I know that Busch is going to be one of the favorites everyone's going to take. And assuming Busch's car doesn't fail inspection the second time around, he probably would have been in line for a top 5, top 3 finish, because he went from 40th to roughly 5th in the span of about, like 150 laps or so. He completely...
Yeah, he was pretty patient. He worked his way to the front there, and definitely got. I don't know if he got to 5th, but he did. I know he got in the top 7 or 8.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he was top 5 for a couple of laps, and then he ended up going to the pit, and he finished somewhere in the teens to the 20s. So he, at some point, he did push himself back into contention before I feel like he just waved the flag. But so I think he's got a potential shot, but I'm not really a fan of where he's starting. We can go into the futures in a sec, but for the general rule of thumb for this NASCAR race, I think it'll be very interesting. And I actually have a question for you. How much do you think burnout is going to play a factor for these racers? I know that this is going to be the second race they're going to be in the span of about 3 days. It is worth mentioning for Kyle Busch, who I just talked about, is it bad that he's going to be in 7 races in the span of 11 days?
You know, he's a monster. He's used to driving. He's used to driving back-to-back days there on the weekends.
That's insane, though. 7 races in 11 days.
I know, man. It's but these guys, these are different types of racers than they were even 15 years ago with the physical regimen that they go through. These guys are actually athletes, and I know that's hard for people outside of the sport to understand. But this is a sport that requires, not only obviously mental acuity, like on a razor's edge, but it requires some physical stamina and strength as well. These guys are in fantastic shape. They've laid off. I think that's helped, the fact that they haven't really been in a race car for the last 2.5 months. I think that's going to be something that works in their favor when you're talking about fatigue setting in. I don't think so, Scott. Now, if you want to talk about down the road, if you want to talk about a week from Wednesday night in Charlotte, as they run 4 races there in about 10 days, then there might be that there might be something setting in, especially that long race in Charlotte, which is longest race of the circuit, as it goes 600 miles there for the Coca-Cola 600. And that's something that's it's kind of weird about stock car racing, because you never know. When you say the number, it could be laps or it could also be the miles. Mm-hmm. Like when they go to Bristol, they're going to run the Food City 500. However, that's 500 laps, not 500 miles. So they'll only go about 250 miles in that one. So,
yeah, I mean, the thing about the Busch thing that I just mentioned, it also depends on what stage of the actual race marathon, just hectic schedule he's a part of. I feel like it's the equivalent to maybe a long road trip in basketball, where originally you hear a team, they got to play 8 straight games on the road. And then they actually start the road trip off decently well because they're not tired of the road yet. And then everything falls apart roughly around road game 7. I feel like that could potentially happen for Kyle Busch, but I feel like you might not start to see that fatigue setting in until maybe race, I don't know, 7, maybe.
Yeah, that's what I would say. So let's see how he looks at Charlotte in this upcoming weekend. I think he'll be all right. I know he's driving Xfinity tonight and driving, of course, the Cup car tomorrow night. So we'll see. It is something to definitely keep an eye on. But let's talk about the elephant in the room here as far as this track goes. There's been 113 races at Darlington, official sanctioned NASCAR races over there. Since they opened in 1950, only 16 times has the winner come from outside of the top 15, and that trend held true in the race that just happened on Sunday, as Kevin Harvick started 6th, and he was able to drive away from the field there at the end of the race and capture the victory. Now, here's the fun part. The 5 guys that finished, obviously 1 through 5, that are going to start outside of the top 15, well, Denny Hamlin, Chase Elliott, Kurt Busch, Alex Bowman, and your winner, Kevin Harvick, starts dead 20th. Now, is that going to make a difference? Well, we're going to find out, because you've got some guys sitting up there in the front that aren't used to doing it. Scott, how about a little kind of interest you in a little Ryan Preece, your pole setter? You can pick him up for a cool 500 to 1. When was the last time that you could get a pole setter at 500 to 1? Spoiler alert, probably never.
And Bold call here. I feel like that's a trap one. Bold call. I understand that people want to search for value, and you figure, if I'm going to watch a race, I might as well throw a sliver of money on Priest. Let's just say $5. Throw $5 to win 2.5K. It's not a bad way to spend about 3 hours, maybe a little bit more, depending on the laps that are involved there. So I guess you could for the entertainment value. If the pole sitter, general rule of thumb, if a bet looks too good to be true in sports betting, it usually is. Not always, but usually. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, you're just not going to, the only shot you have of a long shot coming in is something in one of these restrictor plate races like they run in Talladega or Daytona, where the pack clumps up together. Weird things happen as far as wrecks go. Probably the biggest upset in NASCAR history. I'm going to try to pull the year out of my butt. I want to say 1988 was Derek Cope winning the Daytona 500 and that was on a fuel strategy where everybody else had to pit. He stayed out and was able to milk it to the very, very end. I think he ran out of gas on his victory lap, as a matter of fact. So, but those kind of things, they generally don't seem to happen too much on the shorter tracks. Even though this is classified as a mid-range track. In fact, it was the world's first super speedway, as they called it. It is a mile and 1.38 miles with the minnow pond thrown in there. So, yeah, it is likely that the wheat will be separated from the chaff by the end of 500 miles, which is what they're running here. They are running, like you mentioned, another 100 miles further than they ran on Sunday, which it comes out to somewhere in the neighborhood of 65 laps, something like that. So, it's a good chance for these guys to work their way to the top. Now, we talked a little bit about, before we started the show, about what happened on Sunday. A lot of these guys were able to get to the top 5, top 7, but they weren't able to get over the hump. And I kind of equate that to a team that's maybe down 20 in basketball. And, they get back there. They get down 2, they get down 3, maybe they even tie the game. But they have used everything they had to make the run to catch up, and they've got nothing left. And that seemed to be the case on Sunday. So it does beg the question of which of these guys are going to be able to work their way to the top and make a difference. Scott, you're looking at the first 5 guys there on the grid. You're looking at Ryan Preece, Ty Dillon, Joey Logano, Kent Boyer, and Ryan Blaney. Now, I think we can toss out Ryan Preece and Ty Dillon. Your next 3 drivers have had some success, but not a great deal of success here. Joey Logano just really was never a factor. Clint Boyer kind of had a good run there for a while, but his car tended to go away from him and get loose going through the corners the longer the run went. So, and that is another question about what these pit crews are going to be able to do as far as make adjustments after just running on Sunday. Same track, it should be relatively close to the same conditions. Although, Scott, one thing I didn't check on this. What is this a night start?
We were talking about this yesterday. I'm still not really sure, but I'm pretty sure it will be a night start.
I don't have a start time.
Yes, it says tomorrow at 7:30 p.m.
Okay. All right. So the track conditions are going to be a little bit different. Obviously going to be a little bit cooler running under the lights than they are during the daytime there. So, before we talk about that, let's let me get a pick from you, Scott. Who do you like there, and where are they starting, and why do you think they're going to be able to do it?
So if we're just talking about outright winner for the race, there's a couple of long shots that I'm potentially looking at. I know that people are going to want to take Harvick and Busch and all these guys, but Harvick winning back-to-back races in the same track in the span of 3 days, despite starting outside of the top 15, I'm a little bit skeptical on that. I definitely think Harvick will still finish top 5 because he's clearly the best driver currently on the circuit, but I feel like that might be a little bit insurmountable to come back from 20th to break the trend that we just said about starting in the top 15 and winning. So I'm not really interested in him. For this race, just to be clear, I played most of, if not all of the plays that I had on Sunday for a full unit with the exception of half a unit on Logano, and I have no interest in taking Logano again because he was very underwhelming on this track. So for the sake of this, I'll probably put a quarter unit or maybe a third of a unit on Erik Jones to win at plus 2,200. We talked about him briefly on the show on a Sunday. I believe you might have had a sprinkle on him to win. we both mentioned that he would probably finish the race in the top 10 or roughly minus 137, and he finished the race 8th, so you ended up cashing there. But he actually won a race at Darlington last year, and he is going to be starting in decent position at 13, but I feel like that position is worth even more considering the fact that he's going to be starting ahead of Busch and Harvick and all these other guys who did really well last week. So Jones still finished 8th despite starting 20th last week. He's won this track before, and his odds have actually gone up in comparison to last week. He was roughly plus, I want to say 1,800 last week, give or take.
That's what I got. I got him at 18, yeah.
Yeah, and he's currently at 22-1 here.
Mm-hmm.
For the starting spot there, I think there's some value there, so I'll probably put a sprinkle on Erik Jones.
Okay. Yeah, and I don't hate that because these Toyotas tended to get better as the day ran on. And in this starting grid for this race, you've got no Toyotas in the top 12. It's all Ford or Chevys. It's mainly dominated by Chevys. But Erik Jones is the highest qualifying Toyota, and he's going to start 13th in that race. So I don't dislike him at all. I think that's a solid pick. I think he's got a car, and I think he's got a team there at Joe Gibbs Racing that knows how to win at this track. The last time the Southern 500, was run, he was your winner there last year, just like you mentioned. So Erik Jones at 22-1. I feel like maybe we're getting sucked in again, but I don't hate that pick. I don't dislike that pick at all. I've got a kid here that again probably in his 30s, and they're all kids to me. Sorry. I've got a couple of 850s that I like. I like Martin Truex, and I like Alex Bowman. I think both of these guys have the stamina and the ability to go the distance here. They both no stranger to winning races, and Truex again. He's driving the Toyota. He ended up finishing 6th in the race on Sunday, and I think that with a couple of adjustments, they may be able to get him to the front and keep him there. And remember, this is all about being at the front in this race. This is all about clean air. Usually your leader is unable to drive away from the rest of the field due to drafting and things like that. But that is almost a non-factor here at this track, as it's all about getting in that clean air. And your leader, once they get out front, as we saw on Sunday, once Harvick came out and got the lead, that race was over. So I think there's going to be some long runs, and I think that whoever's out front is going to have a massive advantage in this one.
So one thing to talk about with Bowman, because I actually have a prop with him as well, not to win the actual race. Do you want me to mention it now, or do you want to just stick to outright winners?
No, go ahead. So, he finished 2nd on Sunday. So
yeah. Well, the one question that I have for you, because I also like Bowman, and I think that he's a very solid driver. Do you prefer Bowman to win the race at roughly plus 900 on Fox Bet, or Bowman to be the top Chevrolet card plus 325? Because I actually like the plus 325 there. Because Chevrolet, if you go through the list of cars here, really not great. You got Chase Elliott, who even though he performed pretty well last week, we talked about his track record on this track and how it hasn't been that consistent. You had Kurt Busch, who actually performed pretty well, to the surprise of, I'd say, many. You had Byron, who crashed, who's still not that experienced on actual tracks. Jimmie Johnson, who's okay, but I think he's well past his prime. Then you got Matt Kenseth, who has raced, this is his 2nd race since coming out of retirement a year and a half ago.
Right.
I don't feel like Bowman has many competitors here, and a plus 325 with that field, that's going to be one of my one-unit plays there. I think Bowman a plus 325 out of all the Chevrolets to finish 1st is just a lot of value.
Yeah, I agree. And I think you've identified one of your competitors there. I think Kurt Busch is going to be right there as far as the Chevys go, and I think Chase Elliott driving his dad's the old number 9 is another Chevrolet driver. I think it's going to be one of those 3 as far as the Chevy drivers go. But I don't hate Bowman. I think he's been undervalued so far as the betting markets go. And, he's got a great team there driving Dale Jarrett's old ride, the 88 car. I like that. I like both those bets, Scott. I'll take Bowman to win at 9-1. and I'll take Bowman to be the top Chevy at plus 325. I like both of those.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much to buy into the top 15 in Darlington because they're adding another 100 laps. Or not 100 laps, but you know what I mean. They're adding to the race. It should be 60-something laps, I believe. So
right.
I don't know if that statistic just applies to the original formatting of Darlington or if that's just any race that's ever been.
Well, this is the race that's been run at Darlington more than anything else is the Southern 500.
Yeah. So I feel like based on that the trend that we talked about last week might actually mean even more this week or this Wednesday than it did on Sunday, even though it still applied on Sunday. So that's what I'm asking for the people at home. So the trend that you mentioned tends to focus mainly on this format for Wednesday, which is why I'm a little bit scared off on Bowman to win the thing because he's starting outside the top 15. I'm just looking at the rest of the Chevrolets. If you think about all the other people, the usual suspects, so to speak, on who wins the race, with Harvick and Busch and all these other guys, even Truex, as you mentioned, as a dark horse candidate potentially, none of them are Chevrolet. So if you really think that Bowman is the next up-and-comer racer, and we both seem to be pretty high on him, especially after coming second in this track a couple of days ago, plus 325? I mean, that's a unit play for me. I feel like that is definitely a good way to go in terms of value, so I'll be going there.
Yeah, and you get to hedge a little bit against one of those Toyotas making a run as well, or one of the Fords being a dominant car. So yeah, that's I don't you don't have to necessarily beat those other two manufacturers, but you do get the top Chevy price and able to fade your able to cover your other bet there to win just a little bit. I like that quite a bit. You know, Scott, the one I'm really disappointed in, and we talked a little bit about on the recap show yesterday. I really wanted to see Jimmie Johnson out there. He had a great car on Sunday. Just horrible break as he was sent into the wall by a lap car that he was trying to get around there that checked up on him. And now he's starting 37th for this race, which makes him basically, for me, unbettable. I really wanted to see.
Has he really been bettable for the last couple of years, though? I don't know about that.
No, but I mean, I really liked the way he looked on Sunday. He looked like a guy that was hungry. It kind of looked like the old Jimmie Johnson. It was I think he had the car to win. I think they had that car right where they wanted it, and I think he would have been a real contender all the way to the end. It was just again.
Yeah, would you agree though that if you liked the car and the car ended up crashing, the odds of him having the same car are probably slimmer than somebody who finished the race unscathed, or you don't think that matters?
Yeah, there's a lot of yeah, absolutely, because there's a lot of factors. You know, there's and the main thing is it's track condition. You get those cars set up and they fit that track condition exactly. It is very hard to get the same sort of synergy with different track conditions. And it's just the vagaries of racing. There's so many minute adjustments that they have to make and get it just right. So you're right. The odds of that car being just humming along like it was on Sunday are very small, regardless of the fact that he was starting 37th. If you like Jimmie, you can get him at 16-1, which
that's not even a good price for where he's starting.
No, it really isn't. Basically, I'm looking at the and here's another guy that I think you can throw out, and I hate to say it, it's going to take a real piece of racing, and he had a run at it the other day. We talked a little bit about it before we got started. It's Kyle Busch starting at 26th. To me, there is absolutely no value on taking Kyle Busch as your second favorite. I've got him at plus 650. And I just don't see the value on taking somebody that's buried that deep in the field, regardless of whether he's, arguably perhaps the best race car driver in the world right now. Certainly in this continent. I don't know your thoughts on Kyle Busch. Is there any value there on him moving up 25 spots to take the lead at six, be the second favorite?
I think that it's possible for him to be a competitor in this race. Having said that, from a value perspective, I don't really see the point. I know that in the race on Sunday, he went from 40th to about 5th in the span of about 150 laps. So I know that he has the ability to move up in the field. But the question that you have to ask yourself when he's starting in, let's just say, less than optimal starting positions, I just have a couple of questions about whether or not he's going to have enough in the tank after racing the day before to, keep it together for these extra 60-something laps. I think he probably should, but I think it's definitely worth talking about. And I feel like, especially at the end of the race on Sunday when he was in the top 10, he kind of waved the flag with about 20 to 30 laps or maybe a little bit more where he just went to the pit and he was pretty much content with finishing somewhere in the 20s. So you have to wonder if Kyle Busch is fully sold out and potentially winning this race, or if he's just focused more on actually qualifying for the Cup Series. And I feel like that might be a factor.
If I recall, and I'd have to go back and look at this, but I thought both him and Erik Jones were having a vibration, that they were worried about a tire going down, and they had to make an extra stop to have that checked out. I know that Jones was having a vibration, and I think Busch was as well. There was one other driver that was having a problem.
That's possible, but wouldn't you agree that, hypothetically speaking, if this was a must-win race for Busch probably would have continued without going to the pit, or you don't even think so?
No, you've got to get that fixed, or you run the risk of finishing way down the line if that vibration turns out to be a cut tire or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Busch, I thought he had a good car, especially after failing inspection. Usually your car just looks awful after that. So I thought Busch had a pretty good car, but we talked about it with Jimmie and how if somebody's starting that far back, you can't bet him at the odds that are currently presented. Kyle Busch is definitely a top 3 driver currently on the circuit, but at his starting position and the history of Darlington that you keep mentioning, I can't take that as a second favorite. That is just not a value play for me.
No, I think if you were going to give me somewhere around between 800 and 1,000, I'd be a lot more interested in that play. But I think you've hit it on the head as the second favorite there at plus 650. I just don't see the value on Kyle Busch. Now we could certainly come to the show on Thursday and have egg on our faces as Kyle Busch once again proves what a great race car driver he is. And you know what? You'll tip your cap and you'll move on. And we're here hunting value. We're looking for things that are a little bit under the radar of this race. A lot of things can happen in this race, and you could have shenanigans before it gets sorted out. You could have guys running up front that aren't used to running up front. You could have guys take out, a good portion of the field. I mean, you're not going to have the big one like they have on the super speedways, but you definitely could have some of these guys taking out some of the favorites, some of the contenders. So yeah, I'm kind of looking forward to this race just from a chaos standpoint.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's going to be an interesting spectacle. I think it's going to be a lot more strategy and a lot more interesting than it was on Sunday, as even though that was a random draw, it seemed to be a little more in line with the favorites, other than, like you said, Kyle Busch having to go to the back of the pack for failing inspection twice. But it's going to be something that's definitely it's going to be a very, very watchable thing. I'm anxious to see how it all sorts out. And by the way, if you wanted to take a prohibitive favor, you could take Kyle Busch in tonight's race at minus 150.
I'm not even sure how somebody could be a minus 150 favorite in NASCAR, but I did see that. I don't think you can play that line either. How are you supposed to play a minus 150 in a NASCAR race?
You just can't. It's like LeBron going and playing against a good college team. It could still lose. You can still, your teammates and everything may let you down. But yeah,
it's not even just the teammates. Even worse in NASCAR because it's the car. I mean, at the end of the day, Kyle Busch is definitely the best driver in that circuit. But one flat tire, it's not like because he's a good driver, he's less likely to get into an accident on turn 4. If somebody bumps him in the back, I mean, there's there's nothing he can do about it.
And of course, with the Xfinity racers, you've got a more inexperienced crew, and you've got shenanigans more likely to happen there, as you've got a bunch of guys driving that aren't quite the quality that they are at the Cup level.
Yeah, he should win, assuming no accidents, but you can't just immediately assume no accidents when you have
right, or nothing
less
goes wrong with the
experienced
car.
drivers.
Yep. You're absolutely right. There's really three parts. There's his ability, there's the ability of those around him, and there's the ability of the car and the team. So any one of those three things could go wrong. Likely his ability won't go wrong, but certainly the other two are in play. I wouldn't. I'm not going to bet anybody in a race at minus 150. I just don't see any value there at all. Who else you got on the list for tomorrow's race? Who else? Where's a little sneaky value? You kind of like you were talking about digging on some long shots. Who you got?
So before I get to one of the long shots, I'm actually going to mention another prop that I forgot to mention before. I already mentioned Bowman being the top Chevrolet at plus 325 on DraftKings. This is a complete chalky play, but a Harvick to be top Ford car at plus 160, just give it to me for a unit. That's a great deal based on the other Ford cars available. He has to compete with Keselowski, Logano, Blaney, and Bowyer. Now, I know that in terms of starting position, Harvick is the worst off out of those five that I mentioned, but Logano's been terrible on this track historically. Keselowski is usually decent on this track. He had mixed results, I think is a good way to put it, on Sunday after starting off really well and then kind of falling apart late. Blaney, don't really trust him that much. Bowyer's potentially got a shot at 14-1 for some sneaky value there. But at the end of the day, you're adding another 60-something laps, potentially more. How do you not take the best driver in the entire circuit against just far inferior drivers? I got to take Harvick as the top Ford car at plus 160.
That's hard to argue with at the end of the day because Harvick has had the best Ford all season. In fact, he's been the best driver. He currently leads in points. So yeah, it's that's a fair play. You've got and I think you've correctly identified the competition there. There is one guy that I wonder. He looked decent at times on Sunday. You got to remember if he's all the way back, and that is Ryan Newman driving the old Mark Martin car, that number 6 Ford.
Newman is 22-1.
Yeah, and I know that he's a definite long shot in this race. He's got a decent starting spot as he starts 6th there.
Oh, I meant in the Ford thing. He's 22-1.
Oh, in the Ford, to be the top Ford, he's 22-1.
Just the top Ford, he's 22-1, not the overall race. So if you wanted value there, I think you could take Newman there, but in terms of the overall race, Newman to actually win is roughly 70-1.
I've got him at 90.
Okay.
I've got him at 90 on PointsBet.
Yeah. So based on that, I don't really think he's fully back yet. And after Harvick, even though he's starting 20th and his starting spot's not great to win the race, he is clearly better than every other Ford car that I mentioned. And as you go down the list, the quality of driver gets worse and worse based on the odds naturally. So who's his biggest competitor besides Keselowski, who's been a little bit inconsistent, and wild card Clint Bowyer?
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like Harvick's going to mop the floor with these people.
Yeah, Logano or Bowyer.
Logano's historically is awful on this track. So
yeah, he has not mastered this track yet. Clint Bowyer's, I think his best days are behind him, still driving there for Stewart Haas Racing in that 14 car, the old Tony Stewart car. Yeah, I just don't see. I'm looking at the list like you are. I just don't see these guys being able to make that jump.
At first glance, you might say, well, Harvick is one of the favorites to win the race, and you eliminate about 90% of his competitors, and he's plus 160. I don't know how I don't take that, and I plan on taking that for a unit as well.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think that's a solid play. I'm looking at the list here, and that's certainly the way that should shake out. I don't think there's anybody outside of the top 20 that's going to threaten other than Kyle Busch. I think that's going to be the one to keep an eye on. William Byron, we're going to find out how good his skills really are as he finishes 34th, starts 34th in the old the 24 car, the car there with the Jeff Gordon's old car. So we're going to find out if the kid can drive or not, because he's going to have his hands full all day long trying to get out of that, trying to get out of the back of the pack there.
Well, I saw his matchup was against Jimmie Johnson, which I think is a very unattractive option. If I'm being, I would probably have to lean Byron out of the two. No offense to Jimmie, but Jimmie just crashed his car last week. So did Byron, I guess. So that's a wash. But Byron, before he crashed, I think we both agree that Jimmie did too, but I thought Byron had a phenomenal car. And Byron, even though he's always a potential danger due to the lack of experience of crashing, which makes him a little bit of a volatile selection, I really think that the Jimmie performance on Sunday was a bit of a fluke. Because before that, for I'd say the past year or so, has he really ever been competitive?
Really. Well, he hasn't really been. He hasn't really. Yeah, he's gone. Sunday was his 100th race in a row without winning, which is, I think, the longest stretch of his career, obviously. So, has he been competitive as far as being a top 10? Yeah, he has. But has he been competitive as far as winning a race? No, not really.
I don't have any interest in actually playing that matchup prop, but I thought it was just worth mentioning because it's kind of a matchup between the old school and the new school. So I feel like
taking your 34th starter against your 37th starter, I want no part of that. That's just too much stuff goes wrong back there in the inexperienced back 20, and there are some guys that are definitely not experienced, especially at this track. Back in that in the back part of that grid, it could be some ugly racing out there. As it is going to be fun to watch these guys. There's three guys that we're going to keep an eye on for me trying to come through the pack, and that is Kyle Busch starting 26th, Jimmie Johnson starting 37th, and the aforementioned William Byron starting 34th. It's going to be fun to see those guys try to work their way to the front of the pack. They do have another 100 miles. We'll see if that makes a difference. I personally, I just don't think so. I think there's just too much noise to get through there. Now, having said that, here's my prediction. One of those guys is going to finish in the top 10.
Okay. That is I don't want to call that bold, but that's a prediction, all right.
Oh, that's semi-bold maybe. That's I'd like to see a prop on that between the three of them. We'll see. I think obviously the contender for that bet would be Kyle Busch. I think he's got the best skills, the best.
I think Busch is going to finish top 10.
And, at the end of the day, he's only got to move up 16 spots. Of those three guys, he's got the best starting spot there at 26. The other guy's buried back.
Do you want to guess what Busch's odds to finish top 10 are in DraftKings?
Finish top 10, I'm going to say like minus 180.
Minus 305.
Yeesh. Wow.
Yeah. A lot of that's based on cachet, but I think people know that Kyle Busch and Harvick are – I don't say they're the creme de la Harvick is clearly the creme de la creme of the circuit. I got to say that Busch is top 3. So if you want to make an argument there, especially if Busch's car didn't have to start 40th last week, he might have been in position to potentially win the race. So that might play a factor as well in the handicapping that the sports books are, going through when it comes to setting these lines. I'm going to mention one other prop to you that I'm kind of curious about. I'm on the fence, but I kind of wanted your thoughts about it. Denny Hamlin to finish top 5 at plus 125. I don't know if that plus is high enough for me to play, but it's tempting.
I'm just looking to see his starting back in the 16th spot, top 5. You said?
Yeah, he finished in the top 5 last week.
Well, you know what? He does do a great job at that track. We talked about that before the race last Sunday. He is pretty much the master of that track. I'd like a little.
Is plus 125 too low though?
That's the problem. I like that price. I like it a lot better about plus 175.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah.
But
I might have to pass just for numbers on there. But
yeah, just from a value standpoint, I don't think you're getting true odds there. I think you're getting shaded just a little bit too much on Denny Hamlin's past success at this track. So yeah, I would reluctantly pass on that one and hunt for a little better value. I'm just looking here, man. It was a.
It's really not as much that I fell in love with immediately in comparison to the race last weekend. I feel like my favorite two props that I mentioned though were the Bowman being top Chevrolet and Harvick being top Ford. The Harvick top Ford one, that's one of those ones that should be probably a minus. And I know that you can say, well, he's starting 20-something. How can you say that? He is so much better than every other Ford car. It's not even close.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you agree that line should be somewhere around minus 130? Plus 160 looks like an absolute steal and a half.
Yeah, I think that's good value. Absolutely. I think that's everything that Denny Hamlin bet isn't. It's a good price for a bet that's a very likely outcome. I think it should be even money at worst.
Yeah.
And to get positive value with that, I've got to play that. And as far as Denny Hamlin goes, I think if you wanted to play Denny Hamlin, you might as well just go and play him to win at 750.
Yeah.
And as opposed to plus 125 for top five.
That's why we're talking about on the show last week. I know if you plan on betting someone to finish top 3, top 5, you're probably just better off taking them to win because you can always live hedge it halfway through and work it out from there.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, I don't mind that. I like guys that have past success at the track, and that brings you right back to Denny Hamlin. He would be. I like making bets on guys in that mid-range spot, somewhere between like 50 and 100. That's why that I was taking a look at Truex and Bowman, both of them getting 850. I'm going to throw Denny Hamlin in that pot as well at 750. That's right in that sweet spot for me.
Mm-hmm.
I like the experience and the success that Denny Hamlin has had. I'll go ahead and throw him on my card there with the full unit at plus 750.
So, quick question: are there any other props that you like? As I feel like I kind of shot through all of the stuff that that jumped off the page to me when I looked at it.
No, and I really looked. I concentrated more on actually just the winning aspect of it.
Mm-hmm.
I knew you said you would have some props and.
Yeah, I was looking at matchup props. Wasn't fully attracted by any of them. One of the interesting matchups, though, is definitely Hamlin versus Truex, and I think that's a very tough matchup to predict. I think that could go either way. I know Hamlin's currently minus 125, so if you wanted to potentially go for, if you think that number's too low, then you could take Hamlin. I think that number is borderline correct. I think Truex has a shot at winning the race. I think Hamlin has a shot at winning the race. And I think that both of those should probably be closer to minus 115 apiece. Would you probably agree with that?
Would you say you're getting positive? You're getting plus value on Hamlin?
No, Hamlin's minus 125. I'm saying that both drivers should probably be somewhere around minus 115. I don't know if you agree. That seems like a pretty even matchup there.
Yeah, they're starting 15 and 16th. They're both driving Toyotas. They both had some success. I give Denny Hamlin the nod and experience at this track, but Martin Truex has had his own success there as well. He's had a victory there at Darlington. Yeah, that's a tough one for me. I do think that's a coin flip when at the end of the day. I don't see a decided advantage. I would probably lean towards Denny Hamlin just because he's had more success at this track than Martin Truex. Mm-hmm. But it is a very, very small lean, as I do obviously have Martin Truex as one of my picks to click there at plus 850 to win.
You also had Hamlin, so that's what I'm saying. It's
right.
Point.
Yeah, I think a gun to my head, I'm going to take Hamlin there, but it's something I'm going to stay away from in real life.
Well, I have one more question that I just wanted to ask you quickly. For Kurt Busch, he was great last week, and there's no real other way to put it. Do you think that was a fluke, or do you think he should experience similar success? Because I am leaning more towards the flukish aspect of it.
No, I think this is a track where being a veteran really, really pays off. I think Kurt Busch was able to take advantage of that. What did he finish third last week?
Kurt Busch finished third.
Yeah, I don't see him getting to third. What's the prop bet that you have, bud?
The prop that I was wondering is that there's a matchup between Kurt Busch and Erik Jones, who I mentioned as a sleeper for a sprinkle for about a third of a unit on Jones to win. Busch is minus 134, and Jones is plus 100. That plus 100 doesn't look too bad to me.
No, I think that's a decent price. I really liked Erik Jones before this last race. I really thought he had a shot. I think we had him at 16 or 18 to 1, and he's not a bad starting spot there. He is inside the magic 15 as he starts at 13th.
Well, he's starting 5 spots ahead of Kurt Busch, so that is worth mentioning. I think I'm actually going to play that for a unit. That seems like the best matchup available on the board. Even though Busch finished top 3 and he was phenomenal starting in the 20s, Erik Jones still finished in the top 10. So it's not like he had a bad race or anything like that. He's already won Darlington once. That's why I like him as a sleeper. And I think that Kurt Busch, even though he's been around for a long time and experience does pay off on this track, I think we can agree that he's probably more likely to finish outside the top 10 in this race than Erik Jones is.
I would probably agree with that. Jones has really shown an ability to run at this track in his short career. Like I said, he won this race
that's
last
pretty
week.
Good. Plus 100, that's a solid deal. So I'll play a unit on that as well.
Yeah. I think anytime you're going to get the guy that won this race last year at plus money or even money like you are there, I think it's a solid play. I think I think there's a better chance that Kurt Busch was a one-off as far as a top 5 racer. Could he finish top 10, top 15? Sure, that's not out of the question. But I think Erik Jones is a good play there. I like that.
Yeah. So that's pretty much all I have. I
Okay.
don't know if you want to just recap everything?
Yeah. Go ahead. I've got to win. I've got on my short list. I've got 3 guys at mid-range prices. I've got Martin Truex and Alex Bowman both at plus 850. I do have Denny Hamlin there at plus 750. Those are the 3 that I really like. This is going to be a race for me that I'm probably going to just watch more as a fan than as a bettor. I'll look at some live plays and see if we can get down there. But as far as the uncertainty with the starting grid and everything, and it's just something that I want to just see how it plays out. So I don't have a ton of plays on this one, but I do like those 3 guys. I know you've got some matchup stuff that you like. Go ahead and recap your stuff, Scott.
Yeah. So in terms of the race, I'm definitely not as confident in this race as I was on Sunday, as we both absolutely crushed Sunday. But for the props here, I only like one matchup, and then I like a couple of the other props by manufacturer. So I like Erik Jones in a matchup against Kurt Busch. Erik Jones at plus 100 on DraftKings. I think Jones should probably be I think you could argue he should be the favorite in this matchup, to be completely honest with you. I like Bowman to be the top Chevrolet car at plus 325, and I like Harvick to be the top Ford car at plus 160. All of those for 1 unit apiece. And then last but not least, I also like Erik Jones to win the race for roughly a third of a unit at plus 2,200 on Fox Bet.
There you go. Yeah, and I think you're getting a lot of times where you have to pay the veteran tax if you're going to bet Kurt Busch. I think you're paying a little bit extra just because he's Kurt Busch. I think you're getting the advantage on that playing the other side with Erik Jones. I think you're being able to pick up some extra value just based on the fact that what Kurt Busch has done in the past. So, yeah, I think that's you've definitely identified a play with good positive value there. So, all right, man, should be fun. We'll see what happens. And remember, that's Wednesday night's race, so that's tomorrow night's race. There is a Xfinity race tonight, or the old Busch series. So if you really got to get your if you want to get warmed up, make a little more NASCAR bets, you can certainly do that tonight.
Fox Bet, just so you know, Fox Bet does have matchup props for the Xfinity race, so you do not have to lay minus 150 with Kyle Busch. There are other options available for betting this race, and you can look for other props. Don't be afraid in general if you're going to be handicapping, whether it's a race or a game. Don't be afraid to think outside the box a little bit. Don't just look at money lines and who's going to whatever. If you look through props, there tends to be a couple of valuable spots there in pretty much any sport. So keep that in mind moving forward. And I personally am a huge fan of attacking prop markets in addition to just going after money lines or totals. So
lot more inefficiencies in the prop markets, generally speaking, than there are either in the in the straight
For the
up.
sports books, you mean?
Yeah, well, yeah. There's more inefficiencies
Yeah.
in those lines in this through the sports books, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Have more value.
yeah, I agree. That's what I've noticed from props, and I feel like NASCAR is another good example where instead of having to pay this massively juiced tax on top 10 finish, top 5 finish, stuff like that, you just need to find one good matchup or one good, I'd say, car brand prop, something like that. There are a lot of ways to attack the same racer in terms of value, and I feel
Right.
like trying to find the best price is the majority of the battle. So I feel like that's the best advice I'd give.
All right, very good. All right, man. Well, thanks for doing it. We're kind of wading right into the NASCAR here. As we take what we are given. It's not necessarily the sports we want to be betting on this time of year, but you know what? It's the sports that we have available. And if you don't want to bet on lederhosen there in the Bundesliga, you do have good old-fashioned American stock car racing at NASCAR, and we'll be here to guide you through every step of the way. Let us know what you're playing. Put it in the comment section. Tell us who you like. Where have you found inefficiencies in the market? Who are some of your favorites, and who do you think are your picks to click for tomorrow night's race? We'd love to hear from you. And, of course, don't forget to check out all the great previews and articles over there at winnersandwhiners.com, sister site statsalt.com as well. Scott, what do you got up on Winners and Whiners right now? You got anything that you've gotten written over there?
I had some recaps from the previous UFC card, but for the most part, not really anything at this point in time. If anything comes across in terms of MMA news or just any other outcomes, I might potentially be writing some stuff later on in the week. But as of right now, I can't really make up stuff and say that I'm talking about this, or this. Kind of waiting for the next story, so to speak, and if anything changes, I'll let you know.
All right, very good. Well, we're going to see what happens. We got some NFL facilities that are opening this week, and I know the baseball talks continue, so hopefully before too long, we'll actually have some
We got some pony news. We got the Belmont opening up in June. It's going to be the first of the Triple Crown this year in a very bizarro world crown situation there, but the Belmont will be going first. And that's
there you go.
June. So
in June, what?
It should be, I believe, mid to late June, I think.
Okay. All right. Well, that should be fun to see, and I'm sure we'll have some of our horse experts on that. I wouldn't be surprised if we do a horse racing show later in this week with all the tracks that are getting going here in the springtime. I think there's some definite plays that are out there. So we've got some access to some good horse players. I think we might have one of those guys on to talk a little ponies to us neophyte pony players. And
I'll make sure to bring the fedora when we talk about the horses.
Excellent. I'll bring the big fat cigar, so that'll work out well. So.
Nice.
All right. Well, you guys, as always, Scott, thanks for being on the show. Appreciate it, man. Hope you had fun laying out NASCAR stuff here today.
It's a throwback to the past for me. As I told you before, I used to be a huge NASCAR guy, and I kind of fell out once Jimmie Johnson's decline started. The two weren't related. It was just a matter of the fact that the NASCAR kept changing the names of the cups, and they kept changing the rules, and I couldn't keep up. I kind of waved the flag on that one.
It was hard. It really is hard to keep up when they change teams and numbers and things like that.
I still remember the Nextel Cup, the Sprint Cup, and they're all the same cup. They just keep changing the name once every 3 years.
Well,
was the
I'm old
Nationwide
enough.
Cup a thing, or that was the other series? I don't even remember.
I think that was the other series. I'm
That's
old
what I
enough to
thought,
remember the Winston Cup, my friend.
Yes.
So, yeah,
Been a lot of different names over the years.
Yeah, I started not following NASCAR as closely about the time my son found out about girls.
Oh,
So, yeah, we kind of had other priorities. So, yeah, there you go. But it should be fun. It'll be a throwback night. I'll be watching. I'm going to be honest with you. I'll be watching this race from beginning to end, and we'll see what happens. But until then, sure, we'll be back to comment on it. So we'll talk about that on Thursday's show, most likely. What are we going to be doing tomorrow? Who knows? We've got a couple ideas. This is a very fluid situation with our show.
I know that, just to interrupt, I know that we already said, and this will be happening, so if you are waiting for our thoughts on the NFL, NFC, AFC playoff stuff.
Coming.
We are going to do it. So it's not like we just push it off because we can't do it. We just realized there was actually a live sporting event coming up in the middle of the week, and we figured we should talk about it. So
you figure there's people out there, like, they get up every morning, they're all excited, like, finally I'm going to find out what these guys think about the NFC playoff chances.
Probably not, but I hope there are. So, sometimes wishful thinking pays off.
That's how we get you. We're suckering you in. You come for the football, you stay for the NASCAR, you bastards.
I know, because the title of the video that people are watching isn't clearly going to say thoughts for NASCAR race.
Oh, I know. It should.
If it was a live stream, maybe that would work, but that's not what we're doing. So,
although, don't tempt me. We could be doing a live stream in the future.
You're too busy live streaming Facebook stuff.
No, it's one day a week. One day a week, my friend.
It's one of your favorite days of the week. It's one of your favorite 7 days of the week. So keep that in mind.
Oh, they all kind of run together for me. I got to be honest with you. So at least NASCAR's back to running on Sunday, so that's sort of normal.
That's a good start.
Yeah, it is a good start. So, and then of course, we're gonna have NASCAR on the next couple of Wednesdays. So, World gone mad. All right, that's it for today, guys. Appreciate you joining us as always. Hope everybody's out there having a good time, getting back to work, staying healthy, all that good stuff. Looks like maybe we've turned the corner here, he said optimistically. So maybe between that, people starting to get outside, a little warm weather, a little herd immunity. I don't know. I get so worn out with the virus talk. Just hopefully things are going in the right direction. We're going to have sports before too long. But regardless, whatever sports are out there, we're going to be here talking about it on Today in Sports Betting. For myself, for Scott Reichel, for all of us over here at winnersandwhiners.com. Appreciate you guys stopping by. Make sure you join us tomorrow. Tell your friends, tell your neighbors. Don't forget to share the link. My God, follow us on social media, all that good stuff. And until tomorrow, you guys take care. We will see you then. Bye-bye.